Today's Life After the Crown podcast is brought to you by Pageantology. Did you know that Pageantology is the only place where you can coach for your next pageant with not one, but two Miss USAs? Pageantology coaches Susie Castillo and Shandy Finnessy not only privately coached the last two back-to-back Miss USAs, Sarah Rose Summers and Chesley Christ, but they also had Sarah and Chesley attend their online interview intensive workshops, which helped them to gain the additional knowledge and confidence that they needed to win their state pageants and their Miss USA titles. You too can coach with Pageantology privately or attend one of their upcoming online interview intensive workshops going on throughout the year. For more information, check out pageantology.com.
Hey everyone, it's Sarah Rose Summers, your Miss USA 2018, and you are listening to Life After the Crown with Tim Tialdo.
Hey everybody, my name is Tim Tialdo, and welcome to Season 2 of the Life After the Crown podcast. It's hard to believe we already have a year of episodes under our belt, and if you haven't had a chance to hear any of those, I do encourage you to go back and listen to them. There are many valuable interviews that you will definitely gain some wisdom from. Now, for those of you who are just tuning in for the first time, each episode of Life After the Crown, I interview former pageant contestants and title holders and women of influence who share advice and stories on how to help you succeed in the world of pageants, but more importantly, how you can flourish in the professional world once your pageant journey comes to an end. As always, I appreciate you taking the time to download this podcast. I do value your time, and I'm glad you're here listening. So let's get started.
Miss USA 2018 is Nebraska!
That is Sarah Rose Summers being crowned Miss USA 2018 in Shreveport, Louisiana. A Nebraska native, she graduated cum laude from Texas Christian University, aka TCU, in 4 years with 2 degrees while working part-time as a pilates instructor at Tatiana and Lululemon Athletica. Following graduation, she completed her clinical rotations to become a certified child life specialist. In addition to child advocacy, she is passionate about encouraging others to have a healthy relationship with food and fitness, and she actually spoke out about body shaming during her year as Miss USA to shine a light on society's distorted ideals of beauty. She can now be found hosting events, taking a dance party cycling class, or enriching people's lives through her new podcast called More Than a Crown. Sarah Rose Summers, so honored to have you on the podcast, fresh after giving up your crown just a few weeks ago. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Has it already been a few weeks? I think we're coming up on it. It's really crazy. It's been a whirlwind since then. Reno Tahoe left the next morning and flew straight to Nebraska and then drove across the country to New York City, and I'm just getting settled back in. So 2 weeks ago feels like yesterday, but also like so long ago, all at the same time.
I know, and the funny thing is we were both leaving, and we just happened to be on the same flight out of Reno, Tahoe, so it was good to catch up at the airport as well.
Absolutely. I'm so glad.
So you're just literally a few weeks removed from one of the most exciting years of your entire life. Now that you have the gift of hindsight, only a couple of weeks of it, was it everything that you hoped it would be?
Well, I think that's so hard because a year ago I was just arriving actually in Shreveport to compete as Miss Nebraska USA, and my goal was top 15. So it's not as though I was going in and planning and had the goal to win. I truly didn't. Of course I wanted it, but I didn't even think that it was possible. So it was never a goal I wrote down, or spoke into existence. So therefore I never really dreamt of what the year could possibly look like. So that's good in the fact that I didn't have a lot of expectations. I mean, I'd followed Miss USA's in the past, Kyra and Deshauna, Nia and Olivia, and Erin, and I'd seen their years, but I never envisioned myself in their shoes. So it was good because I didn't really have any expectations to not come to fruition in that way.
Well, so you say that you really didn't believe it was possible, but I'm guessing in the back of your mind, in a very private sense, it had to be because you won. You had to think somewhat that you had a chance.
Right. I mean, I knew that I was worthy of it. I knew that I had a plan if I were to win as to what I wanted to do with it, and I believe that I did as far as just being an authentic, real example of a role model for young women and also bringing light my career path of child life. But I didn't know that it was truly attainable. I mean, I wanted it. I had a plan if it were to happen, but I didn't know that it was necessarily possible. So that was one of the things that this year, after that moment happened, I really was able to talk about. So when I'd go to elementary schools, I'm probably not going to talk to them about how I found my career. They don't care. And I wasn't going to talk about body shaming, praise. Hopefully that's not an issue in elementary school. So, I talked about what's your biggest dream? And if your teacher thinks it's crazy when you draw a picture of it, or if your parents think you should be X, Y, or Z, if no matter what your biggest dream is, speak it into existence and figure out the ways to make it happen. So I've really been able to take my own experience in that realm and encourage some little ones to do the same.
Well, encourage little ones and, obviously current pageant contestants as well. I mean, I talk to them all year long, and they all are excited. You're now, a celebrity in their minds, and they idolize you in many ways. And I think, look, every woman or girl has this vision of what they hope to be or hope to accomplish with pageantry. What was your motivation, I guess, when you were competing at the state level in Nebraska, of what you hoped this whole thing would be?
Yeah, well, when I first started competing, I was actually just 10 years old was my first pageant. And at the time, going through the checkout at Target in my Papillion grocery store, if someone complimented my big brown eyes, I would hold onto my mom's leg and not even make eye contact. So originally what I needed out of it was some confidence and the ability to not only enter a room with confidence or enter an interview with the abilities to express myself, but for heaven's sakes, to be an independent little girl. So I definitely obtained that quickly. I know my now fiance laughs when I tell anything about how shy I was as a little girl, because now I can essentially just talk to a wall and be fine. But there was a time when I couldn't even accept a compliment or make eye contact. So originally I definitely needed that. Things I got out of it that I never expected. Obviously, an amazing platform for a whole year to be able to speak to causes that mattered to me before, whether that was child life or the balance of health and fitness, or things that came up throughout the year that I had the opportunity to respond to as well. But I'm just so grateful mostly for that confidence that I've gained, because it's priceless. Whether you're standing on a stage with 95 women from throughout the entire world, or if you're just entering a job interview, you have to be confident in knowing who you are. And I think for me, that really clicked my sophomore year of college, when I realized that if I'm comparing myself to the girl next to me about to enter the interview for the clinical rotations that I was applying for at that time, or if I was comparing myself to, my ex-boyfriend at the time's brother and their relationship, hoping that ours would end up like theirs. No story is exactly the same. And so once I grasped that, and I grasped that Sarah Rose Summers' story is only mine, then I was able to rock it and kind of rock that throughout the year, and hopefully, going forward too.
So, and I think a lot of girls tell me that, they do this simply for the fact that they want to build confidence. And it sounds like for you, it really broke you out of a shell of shyness that you had.
Oh yeah. I was a little turtle shell. You're exactly right.
I love it. So, as you've gone through a year of being very, very much in the public spotlight and, talking to hundreds, if not thousands of people, I think I'd love to know what you think you've learned about yourself more than anything in the past year.
Oh yeah. Well, I've definitely learned a lot about self-care and filling your cup. And so I've learned that through a little bit when I was a student in child life. If I was at the hospital and a patient died that day, at the end of the day, what was I going to do to fill it up? But then this year as Miss USA, when you're traveling, and definitely talk to thousands throughout the year, and you're traveling fairly constantly, what are you going to do during those down times, as Sarah Rose Summers? Because I can seek advice from, Susie, Shandy, Nia, all those amazing women, but we're not the exact same person. So I had to kind of figure out at the end of the day, or in those little moments, one thing that a lot of people might be surprised to know is when you're in New York City as Miss USA, you actually have quite a bit of downtime. But when you're traveling as Miss USA, that's when it's go, go, go. And so I had to kind of figure out, when I got in the car to go from point A to point B, when I was traveling, I knew that I didn't necessarily want to be on my phone I wanted to be looking out the window, especially when I was in cities that I'd never been to before, to be able to really soak that up. And it's little things like that I'm really glad that I did throughout the year. And then I'd save, the posting for like the end of the day or the next day. And of course, triple the love, double the hate all year. If I don't post right away, some people would be upset, but you just have to figure out what's best for you, truly. And so for me, it's those little things of taking a second to stop and appreciate, whether that's a new town you're in or a small girl that was just so excited to see you in a hospital. And then her mom took me in the hallway and said, that's the first time I've seen her smile in over a month. Like, it's those little things that I've learned really fill my cup up so much. And so taking that a step forward after just this year is I know that I still need to be involved with children and being involved in something that brings smiles to others' faces as well, because that's what fills my cup and is what I just love doing and what I know gives me the most life and joy.
Well, how cool is that? I mean, I've seen it at the state level when little girls meet, what they'll call a real-life Disney princess. But when Miss USA walks through the door at a school, I mean, how cool is that for you to experience the level of just excitement that they have to see you?
It's really neat. I mean, I went back to a lot of schools in Nebraska. It spoke on the elementary and high school and junior high levels, and that was fabulous. It was kind of fun, to see my own high school, like teachers that used to teach me come out and be excited too. So it's not just kids. It's like my old teachers that were fun and excited. But I think mostly children's hospitals just continue to have my heart. When I was 5 years old, I was hospitalized at Children's Omaha. And then I was volunteering in children's hospitals throughout my life and then decided to enter that field. So I was a student at Dallas Children's Hospital and at the Children's Hospital at OU in Oklahoma City. And so I think it's just based on my time there that now I'm excited, or I was excited as Miss USA to go kind of as that little Disney princess, and bring smiles to their faces, because that's a place where going to talk to schools is amazing and I love it. But that's normal. So these children in hospitals, they've been taken out of their normalcy and removed from their routine in a children's hospital setting, especially if they're a long-term patient. And so that's where I'm most excited to be, because I feel like they need the most smiles.
As they certainly do. Hey, do you remember your video they shot for you when you were Nebraska leading into Miss USA last year that they played during the pageant?
Yeah, of course.
Were you backstage at rehearsals this year?
Yeah.
When they played your video like 15 times straight?
Over and over and over again. Yes, during dress rehearsal. So they play, we call it UCAPs. It's a little video for each girl that explains her life or whatever. But for the top 15, fake top 15 in the dress rehearsal, they played mine over and over again. And I joked, I was backstage with my manager. I said, I want to go out on stage where Vanessa and Nick are and say, hello, I think we can all recite this. Let's move on.
I think we literally had it memorized by the time it was done. It was pretty funny.
I know. It was good the first two times, but then I was like, okay, I could have been a little more clever. Or, you start nitpicking after you hear something on repeat.
Sure. You're like, well, I could have done that differently. Well, hey, I just got a couple of more questions in terms of your year as Miss USA, and then we can certainly get into where life is going from here. I just got off the phone just a couple hours ago. I was talking to Chesley Christ. Chesley and I, by the way, we know each other because I crowned her in North Carolina, so we go back about 4 years. And so obviously I'm super excited for her and just over the moon that she won. But she had a question for you that she wanted me to ask. I know she already talked to you about a few things, but she wanted to know, what advice would you have for yourself last year at this time when you won, if you could go back and do it again?
Oh, that's so good. I mean, I think there are the obvious things that happen throughout the year that I would advise myself against or give myself love and grace as to how to handle them better. But if I could go back and do it again, I think that I would, I'd write more thank you notes. And it seems so small, but little acts like that go so far. And I tell Chesley that because I know that's something she already does. And so speaking highly and speaking of her character, I know this is not your question, but I'm going to do it anyway.
It's okay. Totally okay.
I gave necklaces to each of the girls and just little gifts along their last week. And I remember it was between final dress rehearsal and the show that she and Miss Kentucky and Miss Pennsylvania separately all brought me handwritten thank you notes. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I read it, and it wasn't only thank you for that one thing, but it was thank you for my year. And it truly brought me to tears. So she has a talent about her that she can express passion and gratitude through a handwritten thank you note. And so that's something I think she should do no matter where she's going, whether it's a hospital, thank you for having her, whether it's working with the USO, thank you for the opportunity, or to the families, that came out, because those little things will go such a long way, long term, and it just leaves a lasting impact on those people's hearts. So that's one thing. And then otherwise, lots of little things that I will absolutely continue to talk to her about. Her first night as Miss USA when she was in New York City, I know she posted really late, and I was like, what the heck? It's like 1 a.m. in New York. I'm going to call her. So I did, and we chatted real briefly about, I've already said this once during this episode, but truly is triple the love, double the hate. And that all happens overnight. You wake up as Chesley or a Sarah Rose, and then you go to sleep as Miss USA, and then you wake up the next day and your life is never the same. And that's the same for your family, for your friends too, your closest people to you. Their lives change as well, not just in adjusting to where you're living, but they're kind of in the spotlight also. And so that's been interesting. I know my brother's gotten mail to his office, and so I tell her about little things like that, and to just prepare her family and her friends for that moment that all kind of happens. And I know she's already adjusting so beautifully, but what else? What else is one thing that would be interesting for y'all to hear? We do have a Miss USA Sisterhood Journal. Do you know about this already?
I didn't. So it's like the secret. It's like the book of secrets in the Washington Library.
So things that we may or may not say on a public podcast that go in there, like our favorite events from the year or our not so favorite events from the year, like try to go to these, maybe don't go to these. And it's all in a notebook. And I believe Mia started that. And so it's gone through the years from Mia to Olivia to Deshauna to Kyra to me. And then I have given that to Chesley. And so that's just really something special. And there's obviously the big things, taking every moment that can sound cliche, but you just really have to do those things. Sure. But then also the little things, like the little quirky parts of the apartment life and living with a roommate, but that is an international ambassador. So she's hardly ever there, it feels like sometimes. So you almost live alone, and just little things like that. You just never really know exactly what the job entails until it happens.
Well, and you mentioned you were living with Demi Lee and then Katriona. You and Demi Lee, it's the year of love for you two. You both get engaged. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Have you guys kind of been able to use each other to kind of go through that process of what it's like to prepare for a wedding?
Yes, it's been so funny. So we actually got really, really close, and I'm so grateful for that. It was an interesting journey for the two of us. I think once one new person just suddenly arrives in your apartment, she welcomed me with open arms, and it was so fun. But it was a slow progress to being like best friends and being super open with each other. I'm an open book, so that just happened right away. But very different personalities, and I am honored to consider her one of my best friends. She's actually going to be in my wedding at the end of the year, and we both went dress shopping pretty much during the same month of each other, and we'd show each other options. It's quite funny. Like, she's kind of ended up with something that you might think I would, and then I've ended up with something she might think, or vice versa, And so that's been really, really fun to see. And then just little planning things like that we've talked about over the phone that seem kind of tedious, like the guest list.
I'm sure that's big for both of you.
Yes, exactly. It's very difficult to narrow it down, which is such a blessing because we're both so grateful and blessed to have such fabulous support systems, and our circles have absolutely grown. I think I speak for both of us during our year as Miss USA and Miss Universe. And so it's been fun, very, very fun. And she and I are going to be roommates again at the end of this month. She's moving in here in New York with me. She is signed with IMG Models, and she's going to be doing big, beautiful, amazing things. And we will live together until Connor and I get married.
So you and Connor get married when?
In October.
And she and Tim get married when?
I can't tell you that. I don't think that's public information.
Oh, they haven't made it public yet. Okay, well, perhaps I'm trying to.
I don't think
I'm not prying.
have.
I just thought you might know.
Yes, I do. I do know. It is on my calendar, but I don't think that I am able to.
Yeah, we don't want to make
share
national
such
news with you
information.
dropping the bomb on the podcast, so I totally
Heavens, no. Loyalty.
I totally get it. Well, hey, I've got one more question that came this morning. So a good friend of mine is a member of the national media, and she posted the question on my Instagram story. And she wanted to know this because I know you dealt with it. She said, how did you remain focused after the media controversy that occurred before competing in Miss Universe?
Yeah, so it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy at all. Just to put things in perspective for the listeners, I'm sure probably everyone knows, but that's one thing I need to still work on my heart and my mind, because it's surprising to me that not everyone knows. It was such a big deal in my life and in my family's life, especially during the timing of it all, that it seemed like everyone in the world knew, but that's not actually the case. So when I was in Thailand, I was having a 12 out of 10 time for about a week and a half. Like I told you, I laughed so hard. Laughed the hardest I had in months with Miss Japan Yumi and Miss Great Britain Deanne and my roommate Miss Ireland Gigi. We were ready for the swimsuit competition because of the laughs that we had, honestly. I think that once we got there, we all have so much in common, whether that was our experiences. We just had an absolute blast kind of being there and fully there and joyful and hilarious for the first time. It wasn't all about prep because you were already there. Mm-hmm. So I was having an amazing time, and I was really a floater among the groups that kind of form. There's 95 women, and your groups are going to naturally form. But I was definitely a floater, had lunch with different groups and whatnot. And then there was a Facebook or an Instagram live on one of my dear friends' phones. It was Miss Columbia's phone, Valeria. And what was interesting that most people don't know is that live was taken during a rehearsal. And shortly before that, this just speaks to the friendships and the true sisterhood that doesn't get seen publicly. Valeria Columbia, who has this stunning Colombian walk, was helping a lot of us with our turns and with our walk. Literally, on the side at rehearsal, she was helping us improve our walks. How cool is that?
Lou.
That's what, yes. But she was our former, competitor, And so how beautiful is that? And that's what I wish society could see. And so we were all in a lighthearted state. I think luncheon just happened. So in retrospect, I wish that it hadn't been discussed when it had, and I wish that my tone had been more serious, because I did mean everything I everything I said. Unfortunately, things were really misunderstood and misconstrued, whether that was because of my tone or because of translations as well. In Khmer, Cambodia, I had said the word poor Cambodia, and I meant sympathy Cambodia. And she had never asked for that sympathy, but I just, as me, I was I cannot imagine being in a foreign country with no one else that speaks your same language. For example, Miss Brazil speaks Portuguese, but so did Miss Angola. So she had someone there the whole time. Mm-hmm. And their official translators didn't show up until about a week into the competition. And so I could not imagine being in a foreign country, not knowing the same language as anyone else. That would be very hard. And so where my heart was really pure in that live, it was completely misconstrued and flipped upside down, and parts of it were chopped out, like that Brazil example I just gave. Mm-hmm. That's not what people saw. People saw the bad things. But going back to the translations, poor Cambodia was translated into poor Cambodia, economically, which was not what I meant. Yeah. And so it was just horrible. It was awful. This video happened on a Wednesday. The next morning, I had my interview for Miss Universe, and I woke up. I think I saw something on E! News, and I was just in shock and in awe. And I remember I just had to put my phone away and go to my interview. And I was not myself. Absolutely not. I wasn't able to be. And so to your question of how did I stay focused, I think putting my phone away obviously helped. And then focusing on the good. I think I listened to worship music before I went in. But I will say I don't get nervous before interviews, and that's the interview I was the most nervous for. I was shaky. I felt sick, but I think it was because of the anxiety of something that I meant so purely being completely misconstrued on an international platform, for heaven's sake. And so that was definitely difficult. I know that in interview I was able to talk about the things that I cared about, but I don't know that Sarah Rose Summers, my joyful, energetic, happy self, was portrayed as much as it would have otherwise. And then I drove from point A to point B from the hotel where the interviews were to the arena or the stadium or whatever you want to call it, where Miss Universe prelims were going to happen that same night. And that's when I unfortunately did open my phone, and I know my mom had been contacted by TMZ in the middle of the night. She got a phone call, and I was on lots of international media outlets with horrible headlines that just in no way aligned with where my heart was. And so that was really hard. I really relied on Francesca a lot, my Miss Australia, because she was going through the same thing. I would never wish what happened upon anyone, but I am grateful that I had a sister at the exact same time dealing with it too, because that day was my interview and my prelim competition. It was supposed to be like the most exciting day in your life, and it felt like everything was just like, oh my gosh, why am I here? Like, it was really hard. But staying focused at the end of it all, you have to, no matter if it's an international hate or if it's someone in middle school spreading a rumor about you, or if it's on social media, people that don't even know you, like, you have to rely on knowing who you are and your intentions and your truth, because people are going to say things about you, and heck, they might even believe them, and that hurts. And I'm definitely a people pleaser. I love making people happy. I think that shows with my career choice and everything. But there are times when you have to take a deep breath and say, I know who I am. And when that's not enough, you have to call your friends and your family and have them preach to you all of the reasons why you're worthy of love, of that position. And so in those moments, I did that a lot. I utilized social media comment controls because that was horrible. I actually gave my login to someone else, one of my dear friends that I could rely on. And she actually gave it to a lot of people so they could help, kind of almost crisis management, everything that was going on at the time. And so as far as in that exact moment, tried to stay off my phone, gave my login to other people. I know one of my friends sent me consistently, she's like, here you are on this website. I'm like, all right, I love you. Don't send me this anymore. I can't do anything about it. And so you kind of have to throw in the towel. And then Paula and the Miss Universe organization really talked me down when I was having a panic attack. I couldn't breathe. I was crying. I could not go to rehearsal. Just couldn't believe everything that was happening. And they said, you have to focus on the competition. This is what you're here for. We know your heart. We know your intentions. And that was helpful. So repeating those praises to yourself, knowing at the end of the day who you are, and relying on your friends and your family. And of course, for me, relying on my faith. Like, in those moments, oh my gosh, it's still not for me a full peace. Like, I don't have peace thinking, oh yeah, that happened and the Lord is going to use it for something. Like, like what? What is he going to use that for? That's horrible. I don't understand it being used for anything yet.
And you may not know for a while.
I might never. Exactly. I may never know. But being able to trust in my faith and that he has amazing plans. I mean, for heaven's sake, I'm sitting in an apartment in New York City and I'm a Nebraska girl that never dreamt of being here. So everything's working out for good. But in those moments, I think it's lots of little things that you have to do wholeheartedly in order to stay focused and stay grounded during those rough times. And one quick little thing I'd love to share is Steve Harvey. He got there, I think, the next day, and he sought me out. He asked to speak to me. And I'm the biggest Steve Harvey fan ever. Like, if somebody contacted me and was like, you need to be his president of the fan club, I'd do it. He's such a good man. He sought me out to speak to me. You never ask a girl how she's doing when she's trying to hold it together. But he did, and I lost it. He spoke scripture over me and spoke like a sailor and told me what he thought of watching the video, and was super encouraging, and, really compared my situation to his when he misspoke the final winner.
Well, it's so funny that you say that, because I was actually just thinking about that same story, because he wrote it in his new book that he has out. And as you were talking about it, it's pretty much exactly what he went through. He was the most, I believe, clicked on hashtag in the world for 24 hours. And he had, hate beyond belief. And so just hearing that, I was like, the fact that you two got together, that's, A little divine intervention, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. It totally was. And it was beautiful. And, he sought out my mom and my family to speak to. And I think that was comforting for them. And he told me about, how his wife still goes to the grocery store with security because people are just horrible. But it was nice in that moment to have someone say, I watched it and I didn't see the malice that everyone else is looking for. And I'm a big fan of him. I was so grateful for him in those moments. So hopefully I'm just glad I didn't crown the wrong girl.
Well, hey, look, I appreciate you being open and honest about that. I know it was a difficult situation to go through, but, I've talked to Nia and Olivia, especially in the last couple of months, and they basically say the same thing. The haters follow the crown. It's not so much about you as a person. It's just that they don't like the success or whatever. But, I think more importantly, and what you brought up is that tabloid media that exists, they're just looking for anything that you do wrong. They don't care that you go to the schools. They don't care that you go out and help people and bring people light and joy. They're just looking for the one time that Sarah Rose Summers screws up and boom, we're going to jump on it. I mean, it must be hard to live as a public figure in a media world like that.
I mean, it is hard. I had a lot of people, PR, all come at you and they're like, we need to do something big and great to combat this. And as much as big, great things as you do, that's not what gets covered. So just like you said, that can be hard. But it also has given me a lot of perspective when I'm reading headlines.
I'm sure it does.
Now. Mm-hmm.
Well,
I read headlines differently.
I want to talk about something good. You mentioned in there something that you probably don't get to talk a lot about in media interviews, and that is your faith and the role it has in your life. And I'm sure it has carried you through some very tough, difficult situations this year. Can you talk about, how it's kind of played a role in your life, not only as Miss USA, but just growing up?
Oh, yeah, of course. So a little bit of my testimony, I wasn't raised in necessarily a Christian home. So I gave my life to Christ when I was in college, which is really unique. I think a lot of people think college, go, you party. So I really figured out all of that at the same time, and church hopped while I was in college, like to be able to be comfortable going somewhere on a Sunday by myself if nobody else would go with me from the Saturday night before, So I balanced a lot of that and grew a lot, whether that was like learning how to read the Bible. Like that's a big book with a lot of pages and you're just supposed to open it and understand what's going on.
Oh, it's challenging.
Exactly. So I joined a lot of groups. I found a lot of mentorship, and I'm so grateful for that because that has really brought me to a place where I am comfortable speaking about it. And I am honored to be able to be his light through the darkness and speak so open about my faith this year. And that was a lot of times when people would compliment me this year, like, thank you for being bold in your faith. I'm like, well, yeah, duh. Like, that's what we're called to do. Why would I hide it type of thing? And so it means a lot to me that people saw it and were inspired by it. And I hope that that would encourage others to do the same, because if that is your identity, ultimately, then that's what we should hold to the highest esteem in this worldly life that we're living of, like, trophies and crowns and everything. We're not supposed to store our treasures here. And it's been really neat, whether that was having conversations with other women from around the world about their different cultures and their religions and what they were raised with, or just visiting and learning about other religions as well. When I traveled as Miss USA to Thailand and Cambodia and Singapore, but it's been the ultimate rock. And I think it is, whether you're, for me, like Sarah Rose Summers at TCU in college, or Sarah Rose Summers as Miss USA throughout the year with spotlight on her. I think 2 Timothy 1:7 of we are not given a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, love, and self-control. That's been my go-to verse of stability this year, like preaching that over myself, of whether I'm about to like step on a stage and answer an on-stage question in front of millions as Miss Nebraska USA, I am not supposed to be fearful or timid. I've been given his power and his love. And one thing that I remember, I prayed before Miss USA finals backstage with like my side of girls before the final final competition started. So I'd say it was like half of us over there. Whoever wanted to join joined, and I prayed, like he already knows in that moment, a few hours before the final competition, like who's going to win, who's going to get that crown. He knew months ago. He knows what your today, your tomorrow, your yesterday, your years from now are. And once you pray that and speak that over yourself, then you just get a peace, because then you just go get to have fun and be you, because it's really already decided in his plan. So I'm really grateful And I can't imagine doing it without my Lord this year.
Well, and I got to tell you, I feel like, I feel like I'm, number one, I feel like I'm embedded into the pageant community as one of the few males out there that actually knows all of you. And, what I see is that I do see, and you see all the videos and you see the interviews, and a lot of them, they sneak that in there. I pray to God, I think about God, this and that. It's nothing you ever see them run with at all. It's like, that's it. We'll leave it there. Just don't touch it. But I find that, behind the scenes, it's one of those threads that's really one of the binding elements for a lot of you girls that you come together on, is that, backstage, at the state pageants, I pray with all the girls. That might not be a popular thing in this world today, but you know what? I don't care. And I love to see that you girls are open to sharing it, even in a media world that, finds it controversial sometimes to talk about it.
Of course, that, and I think it's been beautiful to have the opportunity to learn about other faiths as well and then share your own. I mean, we're obviously called to be disciples, but whether that's backstage, like asking who's comfortable to join, who wants to pray also, or who just wants to listen, that's really neat. And in Nebraska, when I was competing, one thing that I love that the Vanbrugh states do, and for those that are listening don't know what I'm talking about, the directors for Nebraska, they call themselves the Vanbrugh. They do a mentor award, so not just a congeniality award, but a mentor award. So the teens vote on the Miss contestants for being like their mentor.
Oh, yeah.
And that was always my goal, because whether backstage, like somebody needed the back of their hair that looks like a rat's nest because they teased it too much fixed out, like I'll do that. Or if you need me to pray with you, whatever that is. And so that was always my goal, and I was honored to win that. And so I get DMs from my Nebraska teams quite often, and that's just the greatest. Like, hey, join the church or join this community group or those things. And that's what it's all about, is planting those seeds and then getting to watch it grow.
Oh, very good. Well, I love that. Let's talk about your podcast. I know anybody that watched Miss USA heard you talk about your new podcast, More Than a Crown. Anybody that was at the Reno Tahoe event certainly heard about it. Now, I think a lot of people that hear the word crown automatically think, oh, it's a pageant podcast by a former Miss USA. But, I know that that's pretty much not the case. Can you explain to everybody what it is?
Yeah, I really wrestled with the title there for a minute. Like, what am I going to title this thing? Because I don't want it to be solely pageant, because that's not what I feel called to do going forward. And so I thought maybe More Than a Crown was not right. But if people take a second to listen, it's more than the number on the scale. It's more than the number of likes on the photo, or it's more than that one client you are striving to get so hard as a private wealth management consultant, or it's more than that big exam or your GPA, So for me, I felt inclined to start this podcast because after 24 years, this massive life goal came and it went. But I'm only 24 years old, so there's so much more life to live. And I have more to offer to the world, and I have more than just that big goal of being Miss USA. There's more for me, and there's more for everyone else that's chasing a big goal. Maybe it's to run a marathon, and then it comes and it goes. I know we all hear about like the high of planning a wedding, and then it happens and it's just over, and now what? Or having your first child. That's a little different though, because then you end up with a baby. But you know what I mean. And so that's really what my podcast is geared to. And each episode I'm tackling kind of a different topic based on people that have been influential in my life, so that they can now share their wisdom that they've shared with me to my listeners. So I've interviewed Kristen Dalton. I've interviewed my model fit trainer, which is really unique. I've interviewed Haley Goldborn, of course. And I've interviewed my friend who started her own boutique. And hers, I think, was the most inspiring to me, because she was able to share to the listeners, like, she's from a southern state. She was always told she was going to go to college to get her MRS degree, become a Mrs. And she has a great man in her life, but that's not all. She wanted to be, for her, more than a CEO. So at the end of every episode, I'm kind of asking, what are you more than? Because no matter if listeners or followers on social media are watching and they think oh my gosh, you've accomplished the coolest thing ever, there's got to be more for all of us. So that's what it's all about. And I'm really, really excited about it and just passionate about the opportunity to keep using my voice and sharing my friends and inspirations, voices with my listeners too.
So is it all female interviews? By the way, my podcast is all females. I will not have a male on this interview. I had a lot asked, and I say, sorry guys, it's just for women.
Do you have men that have had crowns that want to be on it?
No, but I have a lot of people contact me, for instance, on LinkedIn. They'll Google or search, podcast hosts, and they try to pitch themselves. And I'm like, guys, if you didn't hold a crown, then you're not going to be on. And they're like, oh, okay. And so,
yeah. Oh my goodness.
I try to stay pretty close to my niche.
That's fantastic. So mine is not all females. It's something that I thought about, but I get a lot of questions about my relationship with Connor. Mm-hmm. And so we've shared that a bit. We did an episode on, kind of the standards that we were looking for in a significant other before we found each other, and my story versus his, which, by the way, completely different. I'm his first girlfriend.
Oh, nice.
First ever girlfriend, first girl he's ever brought home. Yeah, I know. Beautiful. I wish I could say the same. I have lots of boyfriends. And so that was a fun episode to kind of share with others, because it's these polar opposite stories and how we're ending up together now and keeping Christ at the center of our relationship. So it's not all females, because I do believe that men have a lot to offer too. So I'm having them on as well. Just like my personal trainer I had, he shares a lot of wisdom about, like training for your goals. So not having like a personal trainer that is training you like a bodybuilder if you want to stand on a stage in a pageant, So it's been interesting. Yeah.
And then you just put up a website for those of you who followed you at Miss USA, your new website is sosararose.com. Talk about the site and what you want to accomplish with it.
Yes. So we thought a lot about what my website should be called. It could be the generic Sarah Rose Summers, but a lot of things I do, like if you follow Connor on Instagram, like yesterday I was spraying our new apartment with this bug repellent, even though we don't have bugs. And I do these weird voices. And he was like, wait, can I post this? And I said, no. And he goes, why not? It's just so you. And there are just little silly things that I do that are just so me. My laugh is very telling of So Sarah Rose. And so that's why we chose that. And I have a little blog on my website about faith and fitness, and I have some beauty blogs that are going to be coming out soon. But ultimately what's on there is how to connect with me further if you want to work together, and a little bit more about me. And then I have a whole section within my About section that's all about resources that I've used as far as my faith goes, because I wanted to have a large tribute to that on the website. And then another fun, exciting thing that I'm doing, I have my hands on lots of projects, is I've launched a female empowerment jewelry line, and it's a soft lunch. I just have 4 pieces right now. I have a cross ring that I think is so delicate and beautiful and very feminine, but when you look down and you wear it, it can remind you of, for me right now, with everything that the Lord's been teaching me, like what I'm more than, more than this year, and His plan is ultimately great, and it's gonna happen in His time. So that's what the cross ring reminds me of. But I think no matter where you are in life, a small, delicate cross on your finger when you look down at your hands that we use so much. Like our hands do everything. And I'm not going to get super sappy here, but our hands write on all of those thousands of autograph cards. Our hands open every door for ourselves or for others. Like you're using your hands all the time. So that's why I wanted to have a ring. And then I also did bar necklaces. And I took a survey of lots of women on words that they would like to be used to describe women. So we ended up with, I think I had about 15 options. We ended up with brave, worthy, and empowered. And I think those are so perfect. And I gave one out to each Miss USA contestant. So all 51 girls have one, and they each got them randomly assigned. And it's been really neat to see who ended up with what, because we didn't get to pick it, but how meaningful that word is to them. Like they're brave to be standing on a stage sharing about their assault stories. So many of those women did during prelims, and I was blown away by that.
And so people can find these on your website?
Yeah, they're all on my website.
All right, so I've got to ask you this, because I've had a bunch of formers on, both state title holders, Miss USA's, girls who you've looked up to in the past and who I'm sure have given you advice. And the moment and the time or the chapter that you are at in your life right now is where many of them had a moment of vulnerability and they just said, I don't exactly know what I'm going to do now. And, as you now retire as Miss USA, and, you were a child life specialist and doing all kinds of stuff before that we had seen. Do you really know what the path looks like for you? Or are you a normal human being like the rest of us and might just say, I don't exactly know?
Oh my gosh, absolutely a normal human being like the rest of us and saying, I don't exactly know. When I was in college, I changed my major multiple times. I've never exactly known, but I think nobody does. And so that's being real and authentic and not this fake perfect figure is we don't exactly know, and that's all right. But I'm taking the plunge and living in New York City anyway.
Well, no, you obtained 2 degrees and 4 years at TCU. By the way, congratulations on that, by the way. I know that's not easy. Talk about what those 2 degrees were and why you decided to pursue those.
Yeah, so originally when I went to school, I wanted to do broadcast journalism. And then I decided, the social media realm is so fascinating and it's booming and it's growing and I don't see it going anywhere anytime soon. So I changed my degree to strategic communications, so PR, marketing, a lot of digital media with a business minor. And then I was volunteering at the local children's hospital in Fort Worth and found a career of child life. I was volunteering within their department. I'd never known it before, so I left after, I think, my first day volunteering. Called my parents and I called my advisor at school and I said, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is my junior year of college. Like, I'm not supposed to be changing my degree at this point. And my dad said, you know what, you're so far along in your first degree, your Bachelor of Science and Strategic Communications, so just finish that. And if you can get this second one and do what you think you want to do and still be done in 4 years, then go for it. So that's what I did. And what I studied there was a lot of psychology, child psychology. I researched a lot of child trauma and how that affects long-term and medical terminology. And then I went on to finish my clinical rotations in Children's Hospital as well. So a little bit of extended schooling.
So is child life specialist still on the table? I mean, is it something you might go back to in the future?
I think you never say never. Like we just said, I don't know exactly what my future holds for me. Right now, in this moment, like a week from now, I don't foresee myself going back to bedside care at this moment. But everything I learned through that will continue to be utilized like it was throughout my year as Miss USA. I do see myself going into a philanthropic program, being more of a spokeswoman for a nonprofit, for a foundation. I spoke obviously a lot this year, and that's a skill that I've absolutely developed and just comes naturally to me. So I'm interested in that side of things right now, but we'll see.
Very good. Well, good luck to you. I have one more question that a bunch of people asked me on Instagram this morning. I got it so many times I was like, okay, I'll just combine it all into one question. It's a very easy question I think you can answer. They want to know, Sarah, how did you stay in shape and eat healthy with such a busy travel schedule?
Well, I know we already mentioned my blog on my website, so Sarah Rose, but I have a whole little blog about staying fit despite all the flights. Like, especially when I traveled as Miss USA, as I said, that's when my schedule was so crazy. But when I was in New York, I had time to, go to fun workout classes and do things that I enjoyed or work out in Central Park. How cool is that? But when I was traveling, like, you eat like whatever in the airport and you go to these fancy meals and you eat all the yummy stuff. And so for me, it's all about the balance. I never want to have to say no to dessert. So I will prioritize working out. One little trick I have is I always pack my ankle weight. And that way, if I just have like 30 minutes here and there, I can do a little workout in my room, or if I wanted to go down to the gym. But it's hard. Like, a lot of times when you travel for Miss USA or for work or whatever it may be, I only had free time like in the middle of the day. So I'd wake up and I'd have to be Miss USA ready for the morning, and then I'd have a break in the middle of the day, and then I'd still have a dinner and an event that night. And it's like, okay, well, I don't want to go get all sweaty in the middle of the day and then shower and redo the glam for the nighttime. So what are you going to do here? So I would, do what you can, but ultimately you have to give yourself some grace when you're really busy. And if you can't wake up early because you're exhausted, then you miss a workout that day, and that's okay.
Well, here, I'll tell you this. I was backstage. I was just chatting with a few of the state title holders after you guys had, I guess you guys did a workout over at the convention center or something like that.
Yeah. Was that the Miss contestants?
The Miss contestants. They're like, yeah, Sarah whooped our ass.
Oh, good, because the teens were dying. I was shocked. I was like thinking that all these teenage girls, if I'm going to put them through, a 45-minute Pilates class, they're going to hang in there, because they're all, track athletes and basketball players, dancers, and they're teenagers. They're fit, Oh my gosh, it was hilarious. I was like, get up in your plank, girl. What are you doing?
Well, and you know what?
The
The fact
definitely
that,
hung in there.
I mean, the Miss, I think we all saw the telecast this year. I mean, that group was in shape. I mean, there was a lot of really strong bodies at the Miss USA level this year.
Oh, yes. And what I loved was you saw fit, strong women on that stage, which I loved. And I watched my mom lose 75 pounds throughout my childhood. And so finding something for me where I love teaching and taking Pilates classes. And I mean, if you watch the Miss Universe telecast, you remember Steve Harvey asking me what biking like Beyonce means. Like, I love dance party cycling classes. So I love I'm just an advocate for finding what you enjoy doing that keeps you physically fit, but it releases those endorphins, and I always end up having a better day after a fun workout. So sorry for the girls, but I'm also grateful that I had the time to kind of hang out with them and chat with them too.
Well, I'm sure they feel the same way. All right, so it's time for our rapid fire get to know Sarah Rose Summers question. Are you ready? So it's going to be 10 questions, super fast, kind of like a game show. You don't have to deeply think into these, and of course, just have some fun with them. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. Number 1, what's your favorite highlight of your year as Miss USA?
Ooh, traveling. Generic.
All right. Number 2, what is your current favorite song?
Ooh, Forever and Always, Carrie Underwood, Crazy Dreams.
Wasn't there a Forever and Always from the 80s, or am I dreaming?
Oh, I mean my Forever and Always favorite song forever is Carrie Underwood's Crazy Dreams, which is from her So Small album. It's really old, but I love it.
I need to get the jargon down here. I'm sorry about that. Number 3, who was your idol as a little girl?
Ooh. I mean, obviously my mom, but I also really admired, what's a little girl, I definitely looked up to the neighbor kids like nobody's business when I was a little girl. But then when I got a little bit older, I've really admired a lot of the title holders, of course, that have held such fabulous jobs that I've dreamt of. And Candace Cameron Bure is my number 1 idol. She is so inspiring, from watching her on Full House when I was a little girl to seeing her speak out about her eating disorder and now being on Hallmark.
Yes.
I love Hallmark. So she has been my idol since the Full House days and still is.
I love it. All right, number 4, if you could compete again, would you do anything differently?
Ooh.
I know, that's a deep one.
If I could compete in any pageant again, if it was at Miss USA, no, I won and I was fully myself. If I could compete in Miss Universe, I would obviously love to change the scenario so that I could be more of my happy, joyful, awake, alert self. Yes.
Okay. All right. Very good. Number 5, outside of the moment you were crowned, was there one moment or experience in which you truly realized, I'm Miss USA?
When I went back home for my homecoming in Nebraska, and I traveled to parts of the state that I'd never even been before, and there were lines of people waiting for me.
That's cool. That's really cool. Number 6, favorite New York City restaurant?
Oh, my goodness.
A lot to narrow down there.
I can't do that. I love so many things. Probably
right, so
marinara
pick,
pizza. Marinara pizza.
That's the name of the restaurant?
Pizza. It's the name, Marinara Pizza. And they have cauliflower crust, which is actually delightful. And if you go, you have to get the MVP.
I'll remember that when I make my next trip.
Perfect.
Number 7, is fame all it's cracked up to be?
I don't know. Still figuring it out.
Well, that's a good, honest answer, though. All right, number 8.
Yeah.
What one thing will you now go do that you couldn't do while you were Miss USA?
Get married!
That's actually a perfect answer. Very good. Well, we're excited to watch all that unfold on social media, by the way.
Me too. Thank
all right,
you.
Number 9. Name one bucket list item that you still want to accomplish.
I want to travel to every continent, but I think even bigger, I want to do so and visit my sisters when I'm there.
All right, last one. One word to describe Sarah Rose Summers. What would it be?
Bold.
All right. Well, guess what? You're off the hot seat. Congratulations. You answered all 10 questions appropriately.
So fun. Thank you.
Well, hey, look, I know that you are a busy woman. You've got a lot going on right now, making the transition, and I really do appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to be on the podcast today. And no doubt a lot of good stuff was shared here, and I know that a lot of inspiration is going to come out of it, so thank you.
I'm honored, too. Thank you so much. We talked about the funny and the hard and all the in-between, so I loved it. Great interview.
Thanks for listening to today's episode and to Sarah Rose Summers for her time. Now, if you want to follow Sarah's post-Miss USA journey, as we mentioned during the podcast, she has a new website, SoSarahRose.com, or you can find her podcast, More Than a Crown, on iTunes and on Instagram at More Than a Crown, or you can, of course, follow her personal Instagram, if you don't already, at Sarah Rose Summers. I hope you enjoyed the podcast, everybody. If you wouldn't mind, please subscribe. You can do so on Spotify, iTunes, the podcast app, Google Play, YouTube, or you can just go to lifeafterthecrown.com. And for weekly podcast updates, just follow me on Instagram at Tim Tialdo. Until next time, remember the words of Proverbs 31:25. She is clothed with strength and dignity, and she laughs without fear of the future. Hope you have an awesome week, everybody.